entire globe involving hundreds of different cultures explaining the same phenomenon by different names.
The nature of the footprints, namely their remarkable consistency, their biomechanical appropriateness, those aspects that are extremely compelling.
Hi guys, welcome to the Bigfoot Influencers. I'm Dina Halloran.
And I'm Tim Halloran. Hope you guys are doing well.
We're so excited to have you here today. We have a very special guest.
An amazing guest.
That we'll bring on in a few seconds. But first we want to talk about what we did last weekend. Tim and I had our first speaking event where we spoke at the Dover, Delaware Comic-Con. They asked us to come in. And we just basically did like a little Bigfoot 101.
Yeah, because we don't know a lot, but we just from learning from all the folks we've interviewed. It was the Blue Hen Comic-Con second year, really the inaugural year, but yeah, last year they had a small one. It was a lot of fun. It's close to us. So,
it was fun.
So we had a lot of fun, and I'm glad. Thanks for everyone who came out and listened to us.
We appreciate
chit-chat
you.
about Bigfoot. It was a lot of fun seeing people who may not think about Bigfoot, but their minds are open because they're into other things, that you see at a Comic-Con.
Yep.
And it was pretty cool.
It was pretty cool.
We got them started thinking about Bigfoot.
Yep. And we also went around and asked people Bigfoot questions. So that was cool. And as soon as Tim gets a moment, he's going to edit everything and we're going to post it for you.
We'll do that. So.
But in the meantime, who do we have, Tim?
We have none other than W.J. Sheehan. I don't think he needs an introduction. WJ has written, and we'll get the exact number, 10 or 11 books already. Mm-hmm. He's got an amazing podcast, and he's a friend. I was blessed to hang out with Bill. I know I mentioned it a few weeks ago, or maybe a couple months ago, that Bill and I got to hang out, break bread together, and I just love him. He's a great guy. So we're going to bring him in.
Woohoo! Hey, Bill, welcome to the show.
Good day to all of you.
Hey, Bill, it's good to have you on.
Yeah,
doing,
it's
my
great
friend?
to be here.
Good,
I love talking.
good.
I love talking shop when it comes to Bigfoot.
Ooh, I thought you were going to say another SH word. That scared me.
No,
for a second.
I would never say that.
I was like, oh. we don't have. I guess we could. Well, that's okay.
Yeah, we could.
The SH word isn't so bad. You could say that anyway.
So we're thrilled, Bill. I mean, I just thanks for joining us. You become a friend, which I appreciate, and it means a lot. So we're gonna have fun though today. It's the main thing. So
yeah, first question we want to ask you, Bill, is just for some of our audience members who don't know you, where are you from, and what are your interests
outside of Bigfoot?
Outside of Bigfoot.
Oh, outside of Bigfoot. Well, I live on Long Island in New York. I guess what would be considered Eastern Long Island. I have a lot of interests, boy. I'm an avid reader. I like to read a number. As a matter of fact, right now I'm working on a 5-book set on the great philosophers of the world.
Whoa.
And that's kind of interesting. Plato, Socrates.
Who are the 5 philosophers that you're writing about?
Reading.
Oh, reading about. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, reading about. The wrong word popped out of my mouth.
I don't know all of these people, but I have interest in what they have to say and learning about them, which is why I bought this 5-book set. But people such as, Socrates, Plato, and there are so many lesser figures, like you can get into in many areas of the globe. There are these people like Confucius, right? We've all heard of him, and many other people whose names you've never heard, but played a part in the development of what has become modern philosophy. Okay, the art and science of thinking and order, and debate, working out the arguments amongst clear thinking individuals, the pros and cons. It's a very deep thing. I mean, philosophy is not some shallow entity that you could just pop into a shot glass and be done with it. You know, philosophical discussions, even relative to Bigfoot, just go on and on and on ad nauseum throughout society. So I have interest in these. I have interest in a lot of things. I like to fish. I like to shoot. I don't hunt, but I shoot, trap, and skeet. You know, I like fast cars, motorcycles. You know, there's a lot of things that I like.
Oh, you're into the aviation thing too, all right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, my father worked for the FAA, and when I grew up, you know, as his son, which has a lot to do with who I am now, as far as saying, you know, we see because we're looking. You know, I consider myself an expert observer. I don't miss anything, you know, and we could identify every airplane that flew in the sky. My father was a weather specialist, so we knew clouds, names, formations, frontal systems, you name it. We were like a book. And then stargazing, the constellations, planetary thing. You know, we were into all of this stuff when we were kids. So I carry that forward. Excuse me. I carry that forward in the world of Bigfoot, knowing that there are people out there who are like me, that are looking and are seeing and are specialists at what they do in their line of work. And therefore, I have no reason to distrust these people. I kind of vet them in my heart when I'm speaking to them.
And, you know,
and
I'm sorry. I was just going to ask you, like, so what's a guy from Long Island doing being interested in Bigfoot?
Well,
like, what got you interested?
Yeah, well, a lot of things got me interested because initially, when I saw the Patty film, and now who I am later in life, having had, you know, some medical education and whatnot, I am well familiar with anatomy, musculature, a host of different other things. I knew then, and am further convinced now, that was a living creature. And then if Patty was around then, they're still around now. And a lot of people are seeing them and or encountering them and or finding evidence of their being around on a global basis. These creatures or varieties of them are not relegated to just the United States of America. You know, we have reports of course, the Yeti, the orang pendek, the Yowie in Australia. And of course, there's going to be doubters of what we say and what we think and what we believe. But frankly, I don't give a rat's you know what they think. I know what is true. And I was saying to Tim that, you know, I've had a number of angelic encounters in my life. I've had a number of UFO encounters in my life. I know all of those things are true, whether anybody else believes me or not, and I have my opinions about all of them. But if I come to Tim or to you, Dana, and I tell you about what my wife has been doing since she went to heaven around the house, you might roll your eyes and say, man, this is a little freaky deaky for me. But listen, I know what is happening, and I know why it is happening, and nobody can deny that. So when you know something, it separates you from all the rest, right? When you know something to be true, you're the eyewitness to a crime, the singular eyewitness that saw what happened. Whether or not you believe me or not is of no consequence. All I can do is tell you what happened and then say, thank you very much, have a nice day, and walk away. So when I interview some of these people, like my friend Dave Ryback that I started talking to you about, Dave has been a logger for going on 40 years. These people educate me both in who they are and what they do. An education like you couldn't get in a schoolroom, because they're bringing you into their world, their way of life, the how and why of how things happened in the woods. And they have lately, Dave has had a couple of Bigfoot experiences, as well as his logging crew. They have been regularly having footprints coming through the current job site that they're working on. So now you could say BS, you could say whatever you want. I believe Dave, and Dave doesn't have an axe to grind. He knows who I am, and I know who he is, and he's telling me what's going on. So, you know, these guys are regularly having Bigfoot tracks coming through the area that they're currently working in. And he was telling me that one of the linemen is currently freaked out because it's his responsibility to go down the hill in the dark and rehang the overhead lines that they use to pull the logs up and drag them up to the landing. And this guy's like, you know, I don't know if I want to go down there knowing what we're seeing in the snow over here, you know. And you can't blame him. You know, how'd you like to walk down into the deep woods at 2:30 in the morning with maybe a mining helmet on for light, knowing what's stomping around your work area?
Right.
You know.
Right.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's crazy, you know. And
so go ahead, Bill.
No, go ahead.
What I wanted to do for the audience that may not know. So Bill is an author of books. He also co-hosts a podcast with his brother. Can you tell us a little bit about that before we get into all the juice about some of the witness stories that you have?
Well, right now there are 10 books in paperback and ebook, Kindle, and audio format at Amazon and Audible. So anybody can have at them. It's Bigfoot Terror in the Woods, Sightings and Encounters is the series. And of course, the volumes are named 1 through 10. 11 is just about to be put up on Amazon in paperback. And when that's done, then I can record the audiobook, because you can't do an audiobook without having the paperback. And I'm in the middle of writing 12 right now as we speak. You know, some incredible stuff. So it's amazing to me. And I make a lot of friends doing this. And people call me all the time. They send me pictures. They bring me into their life, you know. And it's interesting. Like recently, I don't want to get into the whole story with you because it would take too long. But recently, I had a guy who's a cotton farmer in Georgia, Calhoun County. His name is Neil. And he called me up to share an account with me. And just to show you how things happen, Neil never saw a Bigfoot. He was taking a client to a piece of land to look at it to lease for hunting. This guy, Neil, in addition to being a cotton farmer, has lots of pieces of property that he leases out to people and businesses to hunt on. And he was taking this guy to see a piece of property, a couple of 100 acres he had. He thought he might be interested in. And Neil had told me that this place was spooky. He just felt it was a creepy little area to go in. It had some marshland and some trees, and, you know, it kind of gave him the willies. And when he brought the guy there in his truck, he says to this guy, why? Even he doesn't know. He says, you know, if you were ever going to see a Bigfoot, you'd see it here. Now, this is coming from a guy who never seen a Bigfoot.
Right.
This fellow says to him, do you believe in Bigfoot, Neil? And he says, well, based on some stuff I've seen and heard, yes. He says, well, I saw a Bigfoot, Neil, and it was on your property when we were hunting.
Wow.
So out of the blue, this guy who he had regular conversations with never told him what had happened. And it fell out over a little period of time where a couple of things became known relative to this man's conversation, that 2 other properties near him, hearing this now from Neil, came clean about their own Bigfoot happenings that had occurred on adjoining lands right near him. So, if you talk to people, things are going to come out. If you're willing to stick your neck out there and be the butt of possible ridicule, you can find out things. But you can't have thin skin, and you've got to be willing to engage people irregardless of the price. When I talk,
what kind of experiences were they having on these lands?
Well, the initial report coming from this guy who asked Neil, "Do you believe in Bigfoot?" and now came clean to him. Neil had some large tracts of property, and his stepfather originally bought these pieces of land aside from their farms. And his idea was he wanted to lease these lands out for hunting. He wanted to make hunting clubs. So he had run an ad in a hunting magazine to attract like commercial customers. And one of these customers was a firm in Ocala, Florida. And they had contacted him and said they wanted to entertain clients by flying them up to his place in Georgia and allowing them to spend a week or whatever hunting on this property. And this guy was part of that company, this person who he had in a pickup truck with him. What happened was his stepfather died, and all of the agreements and leases became null and void. Neil picked up the ball after the fact and started kind of reworking this. But this young guy, Neil knew him, had spoken to him, and he had contacted him after the place kind of collapsed for a short period of time, saying, "Neil, I'd still like to hunt up there if I can. Can we work something out?" And so this is how this fell out. So they were hunting. Neil's agreement was that you can hunt on the land that you're leasing for deer and turkey in season. You're also allowed to come up here and hunt feral hogs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whenever you want to. But the rules were that if you shoot hogs in the field, in the peanut fields or in the cotton fields, you have to drag them out to the edge of the field to let the animals and the buzzards have their way with them. You can't leave them in the field because the bones, as they decay, can puncture the tractor tires running through the fields.
Gotcha.
So this guy was hog hunting at night with another fellow on the leased land that he got from Neil. And they were using infrared. One had an infrared scope. The other one had a night vision scope. They were both using AR rifles, .308 caliber. And they shot about 6 pigs. And then this big fat sucker came out in the field that Neil told me was about 300 pounds.
Whoa. So
they clipped this thing, and it moved out of the field into the woods. They went to get it or to go after it, and they were using the infrared to follow the blood trail on the ground. When they got into the woods, now this is where I talk about area knowledge. Neil told me the forest over there is a certain type of pine tree, which is the type of pine tree they use to make telephone poles. They grow straight and true, and the forest is relatively open to the eyes when you go in there. This is not a lot of brush and bramble and piles of thicket and stuff. Like you could see around in there. they go in, and there's this 300-pound pig sitting on his hind haunches, squealing. Now, they're walking up on this in the dark, using the night vision and the infrared, and they're seeing this thing. And the fellow with the infrared pans to the right of the pig and sees this hot blob. So he's seeing something glowing red-orange. And the glowing red-orange leaps up in the air, jumps behind the hog, grabs it around the throat, and yanks its freaking head off its body.
Whoa.
They didn't drop everything. They turned and fled the scene immediately upon seeing this. Okay. And he never told anybody about it. In fact, Neil learned after the fact that after they had that encounter that night, they went back to Ocala as soon as they could get there. Whoa. It was just ripping the head off of a hog.
So he could see the blob through his infrared.
Right. It shows up as a heat signature.
But how far away did they describe being from this?
They were close.
Experience.
I mean, they were within 25, 50 feet of this pig. And then he sees this blob off of the right. And as soon as he sees it, it launches. And he had told Neil after the fact, Neil said to him, "You're two guys with 308 ARs. Why didn't you shoot it?" And he said, personally, I was so freaked out by the speed at which this thing had moved from A to B and what it had done to the pig that all I could think of in the moment was get the hell out of here. The gun meant nothing. What he saw was otherworldly and completely frightening. And that was their total motivation. Just get away and get away now.
Right. And they're also hunters and not, hunters are, you're hunting something. You're not expecting there's to be something else out there that's going to get you. Do you know? So they're probably not in kill mode as in maybe a soldier would be with an AR. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Listen, you don't know. You can say one thing. You can act like you're some kind of badass and say, well, I get my hands on him. I'm going to kick his ass up and down the street. And then something else happens. And then you're like, whoa, maybe this isn't such a good idea. The mouth sometimes indicates one thing, but the spirit, like the Bible says, the mind is willing, but the spirit is weak. Mm-hmm. So you don't know until you're in a situation what goes on. There's a lot of people out there who are opinionated about, well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't he take a clearer picture? How come this? How come that? You weren't there. And I guarantee you in some of these situations like I've had with angels, you are scared to death. And that's why when the angel came to Mary and told her she was going to bear a son, the first thing he said to her was, Mary, don't be afraid. Because he knew immediately his presence coming in on her would freak anybody out. So if he was going to have a conversation with her, he first had to get her in the right mindset, it's okay. You're not in trouble. I'm not here to hurt you. Which is not what happened when the Bigfoot appears.
Yeah.
He didn't say, don't worry.
Don't worry, little guy. Everything's okay. Ah! And you're dead meat, So I always take the stand, and I told this to you, Tim. You have no idea as a human being the mindset or the propensity for what one of these creatures wants or is willing to do at any given moment in time. There is no way. They can be a wild, fierce animal, or they could walk away from you, and there's no way of knowing what's going to happen at any given second in time when you get near them.
So
there's no difference between them and a grizzly bear or anything else. One might walk by you, and the next one goes, bum, 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 and rips your freaking head off.
Yep.
Right. So, that actually is interesting because I had one of my questions I had for you, Bill. I mean, you've talked to thousands, I'm going to guess thousands of witnesses, or communicated with them, talking via email, phone, what have you. Have you ever had any stories where there was an encounter where someone got injured or attacked by a Bigfoot? Has anyone ever told you any stories like that?
Well, yeah, and I'll tell you something that recently happened. I called it the what did I name that chapter? It's in the tail end of 11 that's currently going to be released. I think I called it the Colorado mountain biker incident. Now, this fellow claims that he has an area where he and other people mountain bike, and it's rough stuff. I mean, these guys are really legging it out on these bikes. I would never do it, but they're gamers, and this is what they do. He came across a helmet, a mountain biker helmet. And, the color stood out. He pulled over, he looked at it. The helmet had some blood in it, as I recall, dried and old, but he could tell, and his thought was somebody crashed. Somebody crashed on the mountain bike. The helmet was left behind as they made their way out and back to their vehicle, Well, later on, he found a bicycle. And the bicycle, he had said, was a very expensive bike. And I think it had some damage to it. But his thought was, even if you got hurt and couldn't get out of there with your bike, you hobbled out with a broken ankle or something, he said that he thought, like, wouldn't you come back with your friends or somebody to retrieve, a $2,500 mountain bike? Would you just leave it there, even if the rim was bent or whatever? You could fix it. But here was this bike, and the helmet was found previously. Whether the two were related, has no idea. Just two separate finds, a helmet and a bike. So he's riding on this trail one day, and he wears the same helmet that he wears when he's on his road bike, which has a little side view mirror so he can see cars coming up behind him when he's down the street and, just keep an eye on things. He sees a Bigfoot come out on the trail behind him.
Wow.
A flash in this little mirror. And that was all he needed to see, and he was alive on those pedals. Now, that was his encounter. He tore his butt out of that place on the bicycle. Nothing happened. But he saw this thing in his mirror coming out on the trail behind him.
So was it just passing over the trail? Was it walking behind him?
He saw it like looking at him on his bike from the rear in his mirror looking backwards. And just, Lord, he wasn't going to stop to say hello.
Yeah.
The whole flight mechanism pops into place there, and you're just getting out of there and hope I survive. But this is how... Did the helmet have anything to do with the Bigfoot? No one knows. Did the bike have anything to do with the Bigfoot? No one knows. Did somebody get killed there? No one knows. It's just three separate incidences that may or may not have anything to do one with the other. But these type of strange things occur, like what I call these fleeting encounters, where a guy sees a creature walk between two spruce trees for 2 seconds. Boop, 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 over. He knows what he saw. It wasn't some grandiose encounter. This happened or that happened. No, I'm a hunter. I'm out shooting elk. I see this freaking beast take 2 steps between the 2 trees. The incident is over, and I'm left sitting there like, what the? You know what you see. It's like me. I know what I'm looking at. I know planes. I know birds. I know identification. I know cloud formations. I study the surface of the water when I'm fishing. I know bait fish. I know what little things look like. It's part of the whole. You know, when you immerse yourself in these things, you have an understanding that a guy sitting in an office every day on Long Island has no idea about. And neither will they have any idea about it as long as they stay in their comfort realm, which is the office, their house, the supermarket, the restaurant, back to the house. They don't know anything outside their world, and they can't conceive of Neil's cotton plantation or Dave's work in Idaho's forests as a logger, or people doing things in Alaska, Idaho, guides, ranchers, and just regular Joes and Janes who have a contact, who have that moment in time when something happens and they're like, nobody's going to believe me. Nobody's going to believe me. You know, but yet
that was an excellent monologue right there. That explains so much about a lot of things, because even if you don't have a Bigfoot encounter and you are out hiking or fishing or hunting or mushroom picking or whatever it is that you're doing outside in the woods, in fields, you know that there's so much going on out there around you that you can't see, that you can't hear. So when you do have that moment, that fleeting moment that you were describing, you know what you just saw.
That's right. And, you know, when I say I get educated by the people I talk to, I'll give you another example. A few years ago, somebody called me about an encounter they had. I want to say it was in Montana. It really doesn't matter. He had a 5,000-acre ranch. When I said, holy smoke, 5,000 acres. He said, yeah, that's small for around here. And he had this Bigfoot encounter, and he was talking to a neighbor about it. And the neighbor was kind of boo-hooing him about this whole thing. So in his wisdom, he said to his neighbor, have you ever seen a bear? This is somebody who's living on a land right near his ranch. And he said, no. And he said to him, do you realize that according to the records in our area, there are supposedly 600 bears living based on these surveys they do, the DEC or whatnot. 600 bears. And I'm
That's a
looking
lot.
And he said, you've never seen one. What makes you think you're going to see a Bigfoot? You know, what makes you think you're going to see one? What makes you think you're going to find a body? You know, it's a crazy thing, you know, but my opinion on like the body situation is if they simply bury their own, that's going to make it almost impossible. But a friend of the podcast, who I did several interviews with, like in the past 6 months, he was a guide for a ranch on the backside of Pikes Peak in Colorado that is no longer in business due to some financial improprieties that they got taken down for. It had nothing to do with him as a guide, but the ownership started to delve into some illegal practices, and they paid the ultimate price. He told me, you know, Bill, I've been hunting. This guy is 6 animals away from completing the Grand Slam in hunting. And I learned from him that it was 27 or 28 animals taking them down with a bow in North America that is considered completing the Grand Slam. And he's been everywhere and anywhere, and he was a guide at this guide ranch and guide school on the back of Pikes Peak for 30 years. He said that in my lifetime, I have never found a bear or a cat in the woods, decomposing or dead, or any evidence of it having been there. Now, other people have told me, well, I ran across a bear once. But this was coming from this individual sharing his decades of hunting that he had never run across one. And those types of animals are certainly more prolific than a Bigfoot.
Right.
He never ran across a dead body or a skeleton. So what do you say to that? Am I going to tell you, you're full of crap? This is what he's sharing with me.
Right.
And you can learn from these people, or you could reject it wholeheartedly and say everyone is full of beans and nobody knows anything about what they're talking about. It's all hogwash.
So can you remember when you started, I guess when you started talking to people about their encounters, was there a story that got you hooked, like you going back in your memory banks and you said, wow, after you talked to this witness, these things are really out there?
Most recently would be the two conversations I just talked to you about with Neil and with the guide from Pikes Peak, because the story is to be continued. It's ever unfolding in front of me and in front of those who have an interest in it. It doesn't end. So when you roll back the pages and you say, well, this one and that one and this one and that one, but it's just ongoing. It just keeps unfolding in front of you. And you're left saying to yourself, wow, I mean, this is incredible. This just happened to him. And some of them go back through the annals of time, and some of them are happening now. So it's like, it's obvious that this thing is alive and well and moving about. Now, Tim, because I've spoken to you about this, I think there are two things going on here. I think there is a flesh and blood creature that we know as Sasquatch. And I think there's a demonic mimicry going on here by none other than Satan himself, causing people to believe there is this other creature that is really a demon, some type of shape-shifting creep that is also appearing in the form of a Bigfoot.
That's
that
interesting, Bill. But why? So if there's this shape-shifting creature, well, I guess, that, it's still only showing up in remote areas or out in the woods. They're not showing up, on Fifth Avenue or, in Long Island. Mm-hmm. So why do you think that is?
I don't have an answer for that. We don't have answers for a lot of things. And I'm not going to sit here and say like I'm a freaking biblical text on everything Bigfoot. No, I'm learning, I'm guessing, I'm putting puzzle pieces together and trying to come up with my own database that belongs to me.
Gotcha.
So when I'm talking to you, you're hearing my opinions and my thoughts relative to experiences that have been shared with me. And then I'm trying to assemble a broken vase laying on the table. And then I find out after I get the pieces together that it was a vase, not a bowl.
Right.
This stuff, for instance, take a look at the Uinta Basin in Utah. You've got Skinwalker Ranch. You've got the curse that was laid down between the Uinta and the Navajo when the one group sided with the American cavalry, aiding and abetting them to take over lands out there. Modern day tribal members will admit openly that there is a lot of witchcraft going on within these tribes, even to today. So when you talk about shapeshifters, wolf-like creatures, people appearing like your dead grandmother and calling you by name, child nappers, kidnappers, animals being mutilated, dark, shadowy entities appearing and disappearing. This stuff is all from the demonic realm. And these persons are welcoming it in with their practices of witchcraft and the dark arts. And don't think for 2 seconds that that stuff isn't going on globally on a regular basis. A lot of things that are going on. For instance, when you watch these ghost hunter shows, these people are ignoramuses to the real truth of the spirit realm. When you see something that's dark, it's evil. The scripture says God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. A child does not leave this world and suddenly get lost with no place to go. That's not the way it works. You could believe that that's the way it works, but that's a lie. You're believing a lie. When you hear some little ghost or something in a haunted house, it sounds like children giggling. That is some freaking demonic entity that's trying to dupe you, and in fact has duped you, that it is some lost little child.
Wow.
You know, you hear stories from the Indians about the Bigfoot mimicking people's voices, sounding like little children off in the woods, and people go to look for them like they're going to help a child. Or my mother's calling me. No. My friend Kelly in Oregon, who is a friend of Dave, the logger, he lives up against a mountain with his house and property. He's got a big shop in the back of his house. He's out there once and he hears, Kelly, coming from up in the mountain. To himself. One day his wife's out there. Kelly. His wife says, what the hell is that? He's just like, I don't know. It's been going on. I said to Kelly, was the voice you were hearing more masculine or feminine? And he said feminine. I said, I'll tell you what was going on there, Kelly. That mother jumper was imitating your wife calling you. And it was trying to get your attention to try to lure you up to where it was. Who knows what may have happened if you entertained that. And an Indian who my friend Rob in British Columbia was doing physical therapy on. And Rob, if you're listening, hello, brother, I love you. He was interviewing a retired mounted police, Royal Canadian mounted policewoman, Canada. When he told her first of a rock throwing incident that he experienced, she said to him, where were you? And he told her, he said, I was at Pierce Lake. She said, that was a Sasquatch. And it was either chasing you out of the area or may have even been protecting you against an animal that was stalking you that you didn't know about.
Wow, that's interesting. I like that idea.
She said to Rob, in our community, the indigenous community, we were warned by the elders growing up not to call your children by name and not to whisper to them, because these creatures would mimic them and try to draw you out. So you could say that's a bunch of horse crap, or you can believe it, but this is coming from a person who's sharing, again, what her life's experience has taught her.
You know, and that's interesting, though, because we have our friend Henry Fransoni, who is actually telling us that he believes that that Sasquatches are here to protect us, something that he learned from the Native Americans. What do you think about that?
I don't think it's true.
Okay.
And there's no way of knowing.
Right.
It's a speculative guess on the part of anybody to say anything about anything that you have no way of knowing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like sharing disinformation.
Mm-hmm.
If I want you to believe something in the military, there are professionals in what I would call subterfuge. I may feed you with some truth. I may feed you with some lie. But I'm trying to misdirect you or possibly to get you to believe something that's not necessarily true or might be partially true or all of the above. And you don't know because I'm formulating this whole thing. I've thought about it for a long time. I'm plotting and scheming how I can get to you.
Makes sense.
You know, listen, talk about the devil again for a second, because all of this stuff is interrelated. The devil doesn't come out to you like a cartoon character with a red pointy tail and a pair of horns and a pitchfork and say to you, I'm Satan and I'm here to take you to hell. He's a devious mother jumper. He knows every trick in the book and he will use any means necessary to get you into the position where he owns you. And I don't think there's any way of knowing that Bigfoot is here to protect you when other people are warning you that this thing will kill you, will kidnap you. You have no way of knowing the disposition of their thinking or what they will or will not do at any given point in time. It's no different than me approaching a grizzly bear and saying, oh, isn't he soft and cuddly? Let me go pet him. You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind.
I do that all
What's
the
that?
time.
Yeah, we always do that.
We're joking, honey. We're joking.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I didn't hear what you said.
He's giving it back to us.
Oh, you were giving it back. Oh, man.
So kidnapping then. So have you had anyone tell you, you just mentioned kidnapping. Have you had anyone come to you and say, they've experienced, a Bigfoot kidnapping someone else?
Nobody.
Okay.
Nobody. This is strictly tribal lore.
Okay.
Mm-hmm,
and a number of different tribes around the country who you have to go back in time when these people really didn't know each other. You have a tribe in Canada up in the Alberta area, and you got some Cherokees living down in what we now call like Kentucky or whatever. These people had no interaction with each other, yet for some reason they're sharing the same story about kidnapping and the hairy man and the Sasquatch and they're different names for the same entity, and talking about similar things happening and warning of the possibility of different things relative to what seems to be the same or very similar creature.
So here's a question for you, Bill. So what in your brain, how does your brain formulate what Bigfoot is?
Well, it's a living creature. Aside from what I said to you about the demonic mimicry, which I believe is definitely going on. And I'll tell you why on that side first. When you were seeing a heat signature of something gigantic in the trees, and suddenly that thing moves and seems to go behind a vertical line, like it stepped behind a concrete block wall out of your view. If it was passing through the trees, any kind of brush or configuration, you would at least see fleeting glimpses of the heat as it disappeared. You may have initially seen it as a big mass when it was in the open. And then even if it walked through a couple of groups of trees or behind some bushes, you're going to see some blotching or modeling of that heat showing through before it was completely consumed by the woods again. To see something move from a blob behind a straight line and just vanish, that is a horse of a different color. Nothing goes like that in nature. So how that is happening, why that is happening, it's really not for me to know. But as a spiritual person, I'm a Christian guy. I make no bones about it, man. You want to talk about Jesus? You came to the right place, my friend, because I'll talk to you about him day and night, and I'll try to convert you. But I'm not going to be fooled by any Tom, Dick, and Harry that comes along giving me some load of baloney about this, that, or the other thing. I'm just not going to be fooled by it. And my eyes are wide open to the fact that there's a lot of stuff going on this planet that is designed to trick men. And there are people that are buying into that or completely sold out to that who are being used as tools themselves to trick mankind. For instance, the Ancient Aliens show. These guys are on a mission to convince anybody who's watching that show that you and I were seeded here by some type of alien races. All you have to do is watch the show. And they're talking about it every episode. That this is that and this is that. And they're trying to disprove what I believe as a Christian man. But it's not going to happen because I know what I know. And
so hey, Bill, let's get back to the biological Bigfoot.
Yeah.
So what do you think that biological Bigfoot is?
I think it's a creation. I think it is, and it always has been.
So you think God created it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think it was a creation at some point in time, and I don't need to know those answers. For instance, when the first dinosaur fossils were exposed in the late 1800s, nobody knew anything about dinosaurs. It was like, wow. When they started unearthing this thing and saw the dimensions and what it looked like, they were like, holy smoke. And we move forward from there. But we don't have all of these answers. I don't need to know all of these answers, to be frank with you. I don't need to. When I listen to Michio Kaku talk about the heavens and the formation of the universe and whatnot, people are mesmerized by the apparent brilliance of this man as he talks about things that they have no knowledge of. They're drawn in. But if you listen to the conversation, and if I was to make the same conversation relative to Bigfoot, he will speak about one event, and not just him, others in this world of physics. He'll talk about one event, and then he'll say, 30 billion years later, this happened. 20 billion years after that, this happened. Excuse me, where did you get that figure from? It's just that I understand they're trying to figure things out and whatnot, but just to blatantly connect the dots with huge sums of time that they believe was necessary for this to happen and then that to happen. How about God created the heavens and the earth and he continues to do it while we're alive today? What do you think of that, pal?
Right.
How about forget about your 60 billion years and wake up to the fact of what is really going on here? So that's my stand. I'm not going to be any man.
Your stand is that Bigfoot is, was created as well. We
Right.
just don't know the details on it. It wasn't necessarily something that was documented and written about.
Right.
So here's another question for you. So because we do have to start winding things down a little bit.
Okay.
Has anyone ever claimed to shoot one?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Many people.
Okay.
And I had an account that I called the Fifth Bullet, where this guy uncovered what he thought was a shelter, possibly a Bigfoot shelter. He originally thought that it might have been made by some hunters who were coming back to the area while they were there to just kind of hang out in, But upon his inspection of it, he said, no, this wasn't made by any man. And then there were bones inside of the thing. So he said it wasn't like cavemen were sitting in this little hovel gnawing on freaking pterodactyl bones. I'm joking with you, but he was thinking this is not
right.
man-made. He sees this thing up on a ridgeline, and it reminded me of the Marble Mountain filming. The little church group filmed that thing a while ago when it was up on the ridgeline. Same scenario, and this thing started to come down. And then it started running across the open area towards him. And he fired a shot over its head at a distance, and it kept coming. And then he squeezed off 3 more rounds at it, and he was sure he was hitting this thing, but it wasn't stopping. And then when it got to like within 100 yards, he put the 5th bullet into it, and it dropped.
Wow. And
when he walked up on it, it was a Bigfoot, and he left it there. So he wasn't going to, have anything to do with any of the legalities or anything else. He just knew what he saw and left the scene. Other guys have fired shotgun rounds at this thing on farms and by their barns. And different things. I have an account called the Pheasant Hunters, where this guy put 2 barrels of birdshot on this thing in close quarters, and it kept going. And he knew he hit it. He knew he hit this thing 2 times, and it kept running.
And so hey, Bill, are some of these stories are obviously? Can you tell us about your books? Some of these stories are actually in your books because we're gonna have to start winding down because we have about 4 minutes left. But we want to hear about your books.
Well,
so how are these related to the books? Basically,
yeah, there are hundreds of accounts in the volumes and more coming. These vary from a roadside crossing to some of them are pretty horrific. If you believe them, missing persons, bodies found with limbs torn off, just weird stuff, man. Structures, things that are out of place, footprints. There's all kinds of stuff going on. Sightings by fishermen, sightings by hikers, men and women. There's things going on out there that people are seeing. And I think we're only hearing about a smidgen of what's really going on,
Right, but your books are telling the story.
Yeah, I mean, all of the chapters are basically individual sightings and or encounters or evidential findings. So, believe it or not, they are what they are. And they're just there for the consummation by the reader. And then it's really inevitably up to them if they believe it or they don't, because
I just love the fact that you've done your books focusing on the witness, because that's just such an important part of the evidence that we do have. Yeah, so is there any way that people can actually follow you? Are you on social media? Are you?
Well, you can listen to our podcast if you want. It's Bigfoot
There you
Terror.
Go.
Bigfoot Terror in the Woods.
Okay.
It's available all over the place.
Okay.
We do a podcast a week, my brother and I, and depending on our schedules, once in a while we launch an old episode if we can't get together on it.
Right.
But my brother is like genius IQ. He's a smart guy. And he adds a certain blend to the beginning of the podcast, which we call Cryptids in the News and Other Oddities.
Right.
Where he talks about a lot of strange things that sometimes is Bigfoot and sometimes is not.
Right.
And then I get into the topic of Bigfoot. And then we talk about our listener mail. We try to share what people are writing in about and answer some of their questions.
That's a great idea.
I love those podcasts.
I love that.
And I mean, I'm a half a comedian. So nobody has to twist my arm to start trying to get a chuckle out of somebody, which I
Yeah, we can
constantly
tell
try.
that. We can tell that.
I'm like the king of freaking sarcasm. If I had a comic idol, it's Don Rickles.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man,
So,
he's awesome.
Yeah, Don Rickles was great. So the best way for the folks to buy your book is how, Bill?
On Amazon.
Okay, cool.
That's where you get them. Bigfoot Terror in the Woods, Sightings and Encounters, W.J. Sheehan. There's all the volumes are up there. And the way Amazon works, you got to kind of scroll through. They don't just all appear in a series. I don't know why they do that. But you're looking for something and people say, I can't find it. I'm like, keep looking. Just type the complete name in and it'll come up,
And they'll get it.
Yeah.
Bill, this was amazing.
It's been awesome to have you on the show. That hour went by way too fast. But you're great. We love your humor, your accent, and your
what accent?
Well,
you have an accent.
No, we got the accent.
Everybody else in New York.
You got an accent.
But you've been a lot of fun, and we appreciate your perspective on everything. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Awesome, guys. Good to be with you.
Thanks,
Thank
Bill.
you.
See you, my friend.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, see you later. God bless.
All right,
Okay.
see you, honey.
All right.
That was cool.
Bill's great.
Yeah, that was fast though.
I can't believe
God.
it's been. Yeah,
I feel like we could have pulled more out of him.
Oh, yeah,
He's
but we
probably
need to
got
know
like
that.
4 more hours.
Well,
of
at
Bill.
least. I mean, you got to figure Bill talks to. I mean, probably like I said, thousands of people.
Yeah.
That he's got stories from, and
All
he's
right.
put in his books. I mean,
I'm
book number
do we
11.
have any of them?
No, we don't.
All right,
No,
well, we're
I
gonna
still,
get some.
Bill. If you're still in the back room, you know, when I was hanging out with Bill, he mentioned, he goes, "Well, I don't keep books with me," and I'm like, "Man, I thought."
Well,
I was
you
gonna...
can still go to Amazon and get one.
I know.
Well, I'm going to start reading them because
All
they
right.
sound really cool.
And there's audio versions, so we're gonna make sure we put the links to the podcast. His brother's amazing too.
Yes,
Kevin.
okay.
Props to you too. So we'll have links in the podcast, on the book, the podcast, and everything else.
Yeah, cool.
So this was great.
All right, guys.
Bill's
Well, thanks so
amazing.
much for joining us. We had a great time talking to Bill, and we'll see you at the next one.